0.7 times, and the 80/20 is 2.0 times. So even in the bad luck scenario for the 80/20, you get to double your lifetime spending power, which is that's nice. It's nice to think you might be able to count on it.
Chris, this good luck and bad luck. Let's just talk about the bad luck here. And do you have any memory in looking at the numbers at what kind of part of the history drove the bad luck?
I don't. It's in my book.
Well, I do know this. I know that one of the worst 40 years started in 29. And I think one of the best 40 years started in 1932. So there is so much luck in this process.
The answer would also be different whether you're at the beginning of your career starting accumulation or you're at the beginning of retirement. So for somebody starting accumulation, 1928 was probably a great time.
Yeah.
Right. Starting their career, even because that means that the market crash happened when they had no money and they started accumulating wealth when everything was cheap.
Yeah.
And so across their lifetime, it probably played out great. A retiree starting in 1928 gets a double whammy. Their investments all get crushed by the market decline, and then they see the declining withdrawals that they're going to have to live through because of the opposite of inflation happening for those first years. Yeah.
Thanks.
Inflation. Yeah. So I think it's hard for me to see how somebody would have not benefited by one of these strategies. I think the only way it could really hurt you is if you are a market timer and you decide to pursue the 90/10 or the 80/20 and 5 years in, you give up on the strategy. I think that's really the underlying theme for anybody who decides to invest differently is that you really need to stick with it. You should pick something you can live with, you can stick with, you can invest with conviction, because the way you get these premiums is by sticking with these assets through the years when they don't perform.
And an earlier study you did indicated that there is no 20-year period that small cap value underperformed.
That's right.
The total market.
But 20 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very long time. One of the things I think that helps a young investor, though, is that because of the cash flows, it's really hard for them to know exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
and that's actually a good thing. You've said before that a lot of times a young investor won't know how bad the market is down because they're seeing these new contributions come in and pull it up. Yeah. All right. So I know that in the AAII and also in our podcast audience, not everybody is a young investor. So I wanted to look at what would happen if you took somebody who was age 50 and had never saved a penny. Can we save them? and I went super aggressive and I said, this is somebody who at age 50 gets religion, and they decide that they're going to maximize what they can with their catch-up contributions and everything, and they're going to invest $26,000 a year, including the employer match. So the assumption of a $68,000 salary and a $26,000 a year savings rate for somebody who hasn't saved at all to this point, I'm sure is not realistic. But I still wanted to know, if they got religion and they decided to do everything in their power, would it make the difference? Would it catch them up? And so I modeled this for somebody who retires at age 70. They even work a little bit longer. So instead of retiring at age 65, they retire at age 70, and then they have 25 years instead of 30 years of retirement at a 4% withdrawal rate. And this late start investor doesn't see lifetime purchasing power multipliers that are nearly as big. And they also don't see median withdrawals that are as high. The median withdrawals for the previous scenario were about $48,000 a year. That was the inflation adjusted amount. This late start investor only sees withdrawals of $36,000 a year using that 4% assumption. So that might be a little bit tight. It might be tough for somebody. And their lifetime purchasing power multiplier is only 1.5 times. Now, that's still a lot better than not saving and not starting at the age of 50. But it's not nearly as good. And the reason is there just aren't as many years for the compounding to work for them, or as many dollars for the compounding to work on. So I think the strategy still helps. Now, if we look at what happens for somebody who is a late starter, who does that 90-10 strategy and puts 10% in small cap value, they increase their median real retirement spend dollars to 39,000 from 36,000. So that's good. And their median lifetime purchasing power multiplier went up to 1.6. And for somebody who did the 80-20, they almost get up to that 2 times multiplier. They're at 1.9, and their median real retirement spending dollars went to 41,000. So again, it's just really hard to make up the difference when you start late, but it's a heck of a lot better to start late and do this than to start late and then just rely on Social Security or charity. Yeah. Did you have any questions on this one, Paul, or anything that I went over too fast?
No, it is. I think of all the people I can't think of all of them, but many people I spoke with who were in this predicament. And it is so tough, because when you haven't been an investor for all of those years, the first thing that happens is you tend to get excited about it when the market is up, not when the market is down.
Yep.
And what they need to do is to be excited about when the market is down. So there's certainly a lot of luck in this process, and of course the other thing that we don't know is that during that period of time that they do in starting late, that they do put money away. They do it during a period of time that inflation is low. That could happen. Then they retire, and inflation goes up. They've got a serious. Again, luck is a big part of what your life is going to be like, and the later you wait to start, the more luck plays a bigger and bigger part.
Well, and luck also plays a role in our education as investors. There's people who invest in the stock market and 6 months later are down 30% and sell and then say, I'm never investing in the stock market again. Luck can teach us the wrong lessons. And, that's tough too. Yeah. Well, let's try and end on a more positive note. So I decided to look at somebody who has been a lifetime investor in a target date fund. So they've just followed this simple path and they've gotten to retirement. And then they consider these options in retirement. Like, would it make sense to invest 10% in small cap value or 20% in small cap value? Would it help them? And I also looked at these with withdrawals that I call nudge withdrawals. Just to keep it really simple, I have the investor take their 4% annual withdrawals increasing with inflation out of whichever fund is too big. So these strategies are pretty simple, like the 90-10. You expect to have 10% in the small cap value fund and 90% in the target date fund. Well, if the target date fund is 91%, when you go to take your withdrawal, you just take the 4% out of the target date fund. and you let the small cap value ride. And then a year later, maybe the target date fund is 12% instead of it's 10. Well, you just take the 4% out of that. And over time, it just keeps nudging these back to the right allocation. If somebody wanted to do annual rebalancing, I analyze that in my book. It's not that much of a difference, but I just wanted to keep it simple here. And what we see is that for somebody who just sticks with the target date fund in retirement, between when they retire and when they die, if you take all of the money that they spend, the real dollars they spend, and the real money they leave to heirs, they still double their money within the retirement years, which is kind of amazing. And if you do the 90-10, you get, instead of a 2.3 multiplier for the target date fund, you get a 2.4, and for the 80-20, you get a 2.9. So it helps. But I think the more important thing for a retiree is, what does it do to the safe withdrawal rate? The target date fund in retirement, because it's so conservative, has a safe withdrawal rate of about 3.7%. This is going all the way back to 1928. The 90-10 strategy.
Can you define the safe? What is the safe withdrawal rate?
The safe withdrawal rate is the amount of money you could take out starting in year one and increasing with inflation every year and not run out of money. So the safe withdrawal rate is based on the worst case scenario. What that says is that there was one time somewhere along the way between 1928 and the end of all the scenarios we analyzed, where if you calculated 3.7% of your nest egg in year one and started taking that as a withdrawal, increasing with inflation every year, you ran out of money. There was one time. It's the worst case. So 3.7% is like right at the line. And what that means is that 3.69, you didn't run out of money. 3.71, you did run out of money. So it's right at the line. And like I said, the 90-10, your safe withdrawal rate for 30 years is 4%, and the 80-20, the safe withdrawal rate was 4.4%. And they all had very high survival rates, 99% plus. So I think of the safe withdrawal rate as a measure of resilience to sequence of returns risk. I think Daryl was the first person to draw that observation, and I agree with him. And I think the 80-20 allocation with a higher safe withdrawal rate is particularly interesting for somebody who may have undersaved, because they may find along the way that they have to take out more than 4% occasionally, and they're less likely to run out of money with that 80-20 allocation than they are with 100% target date fund.
So what else, Chris, can we do to increase this final number, the whatever the multiplier is, or however much we take out or leave? What are some simple steps beyond this average, most common 3%, and then going up 1% a year for 7 years? What are the steps you would have people look at?
Well, I'm not sure when that question will come up, but I think you're right, it will come up. I think a lot of investors, especially people approaching retirement and then in their first few years of retirement, it's been described as a red zone. It's a high stress period of time when you're wondering where the money is going to come from and how it's going to work out. But I think as people get confident that they are able to live off their retirement and they are confident in the returns they're getting and they want to take more risk, there are several things they could do. One thing you could do is, let's say you retire in 2040 and you're in the 2040 target date fund, and you start to feel like the allocation is too conservative for you. Yeah, what somebody would do if they wanted to switch the date and switch to a higher equity allocation is they would choose a later date. So they would go from the 2040 to the 2045 fund or to the 2050 fund. You could choose to replace some of the allocation that you have to the target date fund with a total market fund. So there's a lot of different choices. You could choose to manage your bond allocation on your own. and just replace the target date fund with a total market fund and a total bond fund. A lot of different ways that people can go, and I believe as people do enter retirement and they get through that red zone and they become comfortable with it, they'll start to figure it out, and they'll decide that they do want to do something different, and that's fine. Yeah.
And for the first time investor, I really think if this is about getting an education and then having the discipline to do it, that the payoff for investing in the individual funds, which at Vanguard you can own the same funds, which could include a small cap value fund as well, in some retirement 401k plans, and a lot of 401k plans have a self-directed feature where you could get access to a whole bunch more mutual funds, and self-direct where you could possibly pick up a small cap value. But the idea would be, and Chris, you said it, that 10% fixed income that's from age, let's say 20 to 40 at Vanguard, you get rid of that bond for the first 20 years. You don't need a bond. In fact, bonds hurt your return more than likely over the first 20 years. And then at age 40, if you want to move that money then into a target date fund, you can do that. But I think you'll be way ahead if you get rid of those bonds. Now, I also think that if you do this from age 20 to 40, guess what? You've gotten an education. And it may be that you will be able to address the glide path on your own and have a mix of equity asset classes that will serve you better for the rest of your life. So there are some relatively easy things that people could do to do better. But I think just these basics that you've presented are pretty doggone powerful, Chris. And I know when I say thank you to you for all this work that you do, and it is all on a volunteer basis. I know how many people are appreciative of that. And here's just one more example. So on behalf of all those folks out there, thank you very much for having done this. And your book is available at Amazon. And we don't give it away. People have to pay. It's like $18, or do you remember what it is, Chris?
I wanted to say it was in 1999 or something close to that. I'll double check it while we're talking here.
And every penny that would have gone to Chris, if he wasn't a good guy, is being given to the foundation. So when you buy his book, you are actually helping the foundation further its goals. So
yeah, the book is $9.95 in the Kindle copy and $19.95 in the paper copy. And all the proceeds go to the foundation. And I don't know, someday maybe we'll figure out a way to do a promotional giveaway, Paul, right?
That'd be great. I love it.
I think that would be fun to let people, even if it was just for a limited time, get the PDF for free. That would be awesome.
That's great. Well, Chris, thanks. And we will be back. By the way, we will have that link to the article for people who want to see these tables that Chris has just shared on paper. And by the way, you can try for 1 month, I think, at AAII for $2. You can join and see what they've got. And I will tell you, if you did nothing more than read the rest of the articles that Chris has done there at AAII, I think you'd find them helpful. We've done Rich Buck and I have done a number of articles there, and I really respect their attempt to educate investors, although they get into some areas that we don't, like individual stocks and that type of thing. But generally, there's some great planning information, great asset allocation information. We have lots of friends like Craig Israelson writes there very often. Terrific, terrific work. So, all right, thanks, and we'll see you soon.
Paul Merriman with Sound Investing. Sound Investing, soundinvesting.com, and paulmerriman.com are produced and exclusively owned by Paul Merriman, who is solely responsible for their content. For more information, free articles, mutual fund recommendations, and more, visit paulmerriman.com.